And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, and just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about me movies, mostly horror, and me music, mostly metal. And we are going to continue and finish up the double feature with The Babysitter, Killer Queen from 2020. I still just love that I was able to find this. So, The Babysitter 2, Killer Queen, starts off very coolly. The menu screen is the Queen song, Killer Queen, which is cool. It was released in 2020. It's a little longer than the first one. It stars, of course, well, it was directed by McG, written by Dan Lagana, Brad Morris, Jimmy Warden, starring Judah Lewis, Samara Weaving, Jenna Ortega, and Robbie Arnell. Now, the movie picks up exactly 2 years later, after the first one, where we have Cole, a little bit older now. He's like almost 15. And we are introduced to him again. He's having a nightmare about the milk turning, getting up and getting some milk and it turns to blood and stuff. So he has a nightmare. We then get to see what it's like in high school. He's still being horrendously bullied. Of course, no one has ever believed him about this situation because no bodies were ever found. So he's thought of as being crazy, including his parents. He's bullied even more because of that. He has a counselor session, which was pretty funny. We see that Melanie is still around. It's the same girl from the first one. And they've all definitely grown up some, and she's dating a guy named Jimmy. And they're still kind of best friends. We get introduced to the new girl, which is Phoebe, played by Jenna Ortega. We get to see him having dinner with his parents, in which they are talking about, their belief in his mental capacity. His daddy is such a freak, and it's very funny. It's really cool that the dialogue is still very fresh in this movie like it was in the first one. Like I said, it reminds me a lot of Buffy in that quippy dialogue. So, Dad's still a complete freak. He's, of course, having trouble, meaning Cole. He's having trouble dealing with no one believing him. He believes that they are going to put him away, and he finds out that that's exactly what they intend on doing, is to put him in a psychiatric center because he still believes what he says happened that night with his babysitter from the first movie. So Mel steps in and offers to help him by letting him come away with them to the party lake, out to a lake. So he decides to go. He skips and takes off rather than being committed. They all get to the party lake, and you see that there is a huge amount of people there. Phoebe also arrives at this lake, there for some other reason, not with them. We get to see Cole's parents and Mel's dad, once again caring so much more about his car than he does his daughter, talking about them having disappeared, but he says that it's typical for her. We see Cole and crew get on a boat ride, like a pontoon or a yacht kind of things. Yeah, it's Jimmy's uncle's yacht. So they're out on it, and you have, what's her name? Boom Boom, I think they call her, and Diego and Jimmy and Mel and him. So there's 5 of them again. And they're out there playing a card game when all of a sudden, during this card game, Mel and Cole go into the closet where they share a kiss. It's kind of sort of like Truth or Dare. It's sort of like Truth or Dare, but not the same. Diego asks Cole to tell them the story about that first cult. Mel mentions the book. Hey, we didn't come here to bother him about, the Babysitter and the Devil book and all that. Well, he had never told her about the Devil book, the Devil verses. So that makes him very suspicious, and he's like, I never told you about the book. How do you know about the book? Well, she suddenly jumps up, and it's just as shocking and sudden as the first movie was. She suddenly jumps up and says, because I wrote my name in it, and then cuts that girl, Boom Boom's, throat, right? So he freaks out again, and it turns out that her, Jimmy, and Diego have made the same pact with the devil. And that now they also want Cole's blood. So, about that time, our crew, which I thought was really cool, from the first movie shows back up. First thing that walks in is Max, with no shirt, of course. So Max and John and Allison, they all show back up. And Cole is freaked out about that, and they want, and Sonia with her cookies. So Phoebe, who has ran out of gas right outside their pontoon, she comes in to ask for gas and walks in on this scene. And she's just like, wow, y'all are seriously into some cosplay. I'm just going to be on my way. And she leaves and starts to take off. They go after Cole. And he ends up like being able to get away from them, get up, and then slide down and get on the back of her jet ski. And they take off. So they take off, and Mel and all of them. Now we know she's the evil one. Mel, so you've got the new cult, those three, and you've got the old cult. So they're all joined forces now, and they're after Cole. They managed to make it to the beach, Cole and Phoebe, where Phoebe runs into some redneck guy and nearly gets attacked, and, asks for a ride. He tries to attack her, but Cole intervenes and gets away. They steal his car, but Sonia shows up. Yes, I'm going through this pretty fast. Sonia shows up, and we get to see the backstory. Even though they're very short, it's sort of usually about 3 minutes tops. But we get to see Sonia and John and Max and Allison's backstory before they met B. And so we get to see her backstory at this time. They run her over several times, ends up beheading her with a surfboard on top of that guy's, Jeep. So they end up hiding under the car when the rest of them show up. The old cult, the new cult decide to split up to see who can find him first. Cole and Phoebe decide to go to a cabin in the woods. And that was funny because he was like, yeah, because nobody's ever been killed in a cabin in the woods. So that was, like I said, just like the first movie, there's a lot of meta references and one-liners that really make you go, oh, okay, I got it. So you're very at ease in this movie. That's why I think I love these two movies so much, is because pretty much everything that's said, I get. I'm like, oh, I get it. So Allie ends up finding them on the way. She blows Bambi away, which was funny. She ends up shooting herself in the boob again with ricochets, which was hilarious. Gets stuck in a crevice, and they end up pulling her head off. So very ingenious kills in this movie. Max then attacks them with an axe. They manage to get away to a boat where Max kills this guy. We get to see his backstory, that was pretty funny. Because his backstory, before he ever even met B, he was like working at like a Wendy's, like a McDonald's. And he's literally got no shirt on, and one of his name tags is over his nipple. So that was like, okay, that was funny. So he kills the guy, and they end up like cutting him up. He's chasing him on the dinghy, gets a hold of him. They set him on fire with silly string, which was pretty ingenious. Then they cut him up with the motor of the boat, which was pretty gross. You have John left alive. Jim and Diego try to bail because they meet John at the dock. And then Jim and Diego try to bail, and like she uses her powers as like the Fury or Carrie or something, and like they like implode like a lightning strike or explode, and nothing left but ashes. So both of them are gone very quickly. Mel blows them up. She then calls her dad, who's with Cole's dad, and tells him that they need them to come and get them, so they're on the way. John and Mel go up there looking for Cole and Phoebe, who have made it to the cabin. Lots of funny scenes. They go down into the basement where there's this big Wonderland motif. John and Mel show up and wait outside. Then we get to see the two dads singing Black Velvet in his hot rod on the way. You know, that song, Black Velvet, and that little boy smile. And they don't change the like pronouns or nothing. So that's really cool because they are wailing. They are stoned and they are wailing Black Velvet. And I'm like, that was cool. So they're on the way. Phoebe ends up explaining why she even came, what she's doing in this film. She had a little rabbit doll, and when her mother and father were killed, it was because she was in a car, and her mother and daughter were in a car. I mean, her mother and father were in a car, and they were going to meet at the lake, and they ended up wrecking, and it killed her parents, and she almost died as well. And that little rabbit doll had been lost ever since. But a few days before they went to the lake, it showed up in her locker with a key to the cabin. So now we know why she's there. So, along with a note that says it ends tonight on that certain date. So, the dads arrive. Mel sends them to the cabin. Phoebe admits that she killed her parents, and when she tells him the story that I just told you, he's like, well, yeah, but not really, but, really, but not really. It's not your fault. She was like 9, you know what I mean? The dad starts banging, wanting Cole to come up. They refuse to go up, but then Cole realizes that John and Mel are the evil ones up there. So he's got to go up there and help protect his dad. They go up. John is killed pretty cool by this giant antler chandelier. It's like a chandelier made out of deer antlers. This is the most redneck thing I've ever seen in my life. And that was a pretty good kill. I will say the kills in these movies are pretty unique. Mel ends up then trying to gaslight them. Mel kills her dad right there, which was no surprise. Cuts his arms off before she does it. So Cole's dad ends up tranquilizing him with a shot and is taking him back to town. Mel and Phoebe have this big boss fight face-off, right? Where they film it like a video game, like a Mortal Kombat, so that was pretty cool. While the dad is like juicing up the electric car at the gas station, he accidentally bumps it, causing the alarm to go off, which wakes up Cole. Cole grabs the car and takes back off to save Phoebe. So they get there to the lake, and then B comes out of the lake. And the other cult members, the older ones, they end up all appearing as well in this ritual. So there's Mel and B, and then of course Max, Allison, Sonia, and John. So they actually do get Cole's blood, and they fix they fix the big chalice of blood, and all of them take a sip of it, except for B, because by the time it gets to B, she senses that something's wrong, and then we watch as Mel and the other four, they all like get very sick, start vomiting, and then they like Ghost Rider, they like all burn and fry and poof and disintegrate. And that's when B realizes that something wasn't right, and that was because Cole, and this was kind of stupid, but Cole wasn't a virgin anymore, so therefore his blood wasn't innocent. Therefore, the ritual didn't work. So the dad arrives and actually sees B and sees it all, because B then sacrifices herself, tells them to take care of each other, that she has to do it because she's the last demon. And then she drinks it and disintegrates, and it all happens in front of the dad. So the dad now believes him, knows his son isn't crazy. Bim, bam, boom. That's the end. So I liked this movie less than I did the first one, but it's almost entirely due to the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The ending is understandable, and I guess for a person who's not looking at it from Rusty, my personal perspective, the crap about, losing the virginity and stuff like that, it was part of that juvenile bullshit that I told you about that I have to ignore in movies like this. So, especially when it comes to that high-fiving and yo boy and so, oh please, my God, that stuff is so 13-year-old crap. It's just I don't. So I didn't really like the ending that much. I wanted B to stay evil, not become this redeeming entity, and in this particular case, I think that the good guys winning was cheesy for this movie, because the good guys didn't lose in the first one. They didn't win either. They were just gone. So it made a really good movie. This ending, though, I would have done some different things. They certainly sealed it up. Well, not really. The book is still there. So, they could make more. I really don't know how, though. But me and lovey-dovey stuff, I don't really care about that in horror movies. So having that be the main part of the ending was just out of my appreciation zone, for a horror movie. I would have a lot rather it stay dark. There you go. I didn't really care for a light, happy ending. I would prefer it to stay dark. And it didn't. But that didn't stop it. Like I said, I didn't like it as much as the first one, but only the ending. The whole rest of the movie, except for the last 11 minutes, the whole rest of the movie I loved just as much as I loved the first one. But I just really didn't like the ending. So the ending was kind of a flub, like cheesy, but the wrong kind of cheesy for me. It was the wrong kind of cheesy for me. It was the romantic, heroic ending, and I'm like, no, I'm going to have to give that a fail. But it's all right. It's still... The ending is still good, and it still ties it up, and I understand it, and it doesn't leave you confused, or it makes sense. So there's nothing wrong with the ending. I just personally don't care for it. I would prefer it to have had a different kind of ending. Other than that, everything is hilarious in this movie. Jenna Ortega did great. Phoebe was really cool. I didn't really know if I was going to like her at first, her character, but it was alright. Yeah. I like the fact that Allison and Sonia and John and Max stayed exactly the way they were from the first movie. The same feeling, the same dialogue, the same silliness, the same personality, you know. I liked the little backstory flashes. That was really cool as well. So yeah, I had a really good time with these movies. If you've never seen them, you should find a way to see them. I love having them in my collection. It is one of the few times. Maybe one day I'll try to count. Let's see, I've got 2,300 plus DVDs and Blu-rays. I don't know, man. Maybe 30 horror comedies. I'll be vague, general. I'll say that I've got maybe 30 to 50 horror comedies, somewhere around there. But it's a very small percentage of my movie collection. And straight up comedy, it's got to be about the same. The majority of my is hard science fiction. Horror is the majority of my collection. Drama, action, and hard sci-fi, science fiction. That's the majority of my film collection. I've got a little bit of comedy, and I've got a little bit of horror comedy. Is there any other genre? Drama, sci-fi, and all of their subgenres. Drama, sci-fi, romantic comedies or comedies. Drama, sci-fi, action, science fiction. That's the majority, with horror being the biggest of all of them. Then probably science fiction, then action, then drama. So, and all of the subgenres therein. So, yes, that was The Babysitter. We just did 1 and 2. I will be back. I'm not going to film it tonight, though, because I've got too much to say about it. But I'm going to be back with The Haunting of Sharon Tate, which I think has been unfairly attacked. And well, I'm not going to review it here. I'm just going to say I've got a huge amount to say about it. I loved The Haunting of Sharon Tate. I've got a great deal to say about it. I was going to film it tonight. As you can hear, I can barely talk. I don't feel like it. So it'll be the first one of my next batch. But I knew I couldn't do it because I've got a great deal that I want to say about The Haunting of Sharon Tate. So, that movie. Love you, miss you, bye. I will see you in the next one. Always remember, never forget, you are a very, very special person. Even if you have not made a pact with the devil, and don't let anyone ever tell you different. The Babysitter, Killer Queen. Love them both. I gave this an 8. I gave this an 8.5. I like this movie except for the last 11 minutes. I don't like the ending, but it's still acceptable. It's all right. I just think it was a letdown. There you go. I was let down, disappointed by the ending. Otherwise, fantastic movie, and I will see you in the next thing I do. Bye-bye.